Live from New York. It's Friday night. Technically, I'm not in New York, but this is the NYC ETH Builders meetup group, right? Where just a bunch of cool people, from all over the world, right? We, I guess, kind of started in New York. Our headquarters is in New York, right? But um, everybody is welcome to come and hang out with us. And today we do more of like a hands-on coding stuff kind of session. And let's get out of this here, title page. Yep. So I just had a couple things to random things to talk about, and then interesting project thing to do together. So this one, Cardano Summit, right? I know we're usually talking about Solidity and Ethereum stuff, but I think Cardano is pretty awesome, and they just went live, right, with their mainnet thing. But this is the summit where I'm not exactly sure what they're going to be doing, but they have an actual event in New York. So I was saying we should have something at the Blockchain Center, but actually on 59th Street, there's already a bunch of Cardano people meeting up on Saturday and Sunday, 25th. So if anybody's into that, I was gonna maybe try to go. So it would be cool to just start doing things in city again. I know the COVID thing is pretty bad right now, right? Even have kind of a bad cold the past couple of days. Hopefully I don't cough too much into the microphone, but yeah, could be a cool thing. And even if you just want to join in remotely, I think there's going to be a lot of talks and tutorials and things happening about Cardano, so that's cool. ETH Drop, right? This was the project, sort of a scaled down version of the hackathon project that a bunch of us did. And I'm not going to go through it right now, but we have contracts and a front end, the old front end that kind of works, but is really messy. That's in client deprecated that I kind of want to start getting people using just to try things. And then client, which is a nicer Gatsby React with Redux, everything organized, broken into components, front end. And so trying to build this out and have lots of tests for it, going for 100% code coverage, right? Because yeah, it's gotta practice what you preach, and we want this thing to be really good and to work. And just to kind of show that yeah, we're able to do it. And if other people have questions, it can be just a something to point them to say look, this thing is working, this is how we tested it. So it might be a good example, something that you can model your code after, right? So have a bunch of good stuff here already, some to do. So if you're looking to get into open source things, we have lots of issues here, and you can message me in the Slack if you're looking to pick up something. I know it's September 17th, so Hacktoberfest is starting soon, where you get free t-shirt or whatever if you open pull requests on public repos, which this is. So it's just another reason to get into that. Yeah. Okay, so this is just homepage of GitHub. I wanted to create one. And so I had this idea for interesting smart contract, right? And I don't know if this is actually something useful, but if you guys have ever seen the show Family Feud, right? The game show where they say, we asked 100 married women, blah, blah, and they answered whatever. And then they have a couple answer choices. So what I'm thinking of is a smart contract that's a what did I call it? Decentralized family feud poll, right? So just that, getting the data, right? So I'm going to put this under our TDD Solidity organization, right? And I'm going to call it that. Decentralized family feud poll. Okay, public. Want to read me? I guess just make it a node project and MIT, so you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this and then go over to our terminal. Kind of embarrassing, I have so many terminals open right now, but just gonna open another one. And let's X out all this stuff. Okay. Sorry, tons of stuff open. Hopefully none of them are my env files with my demonic rate, but anyway. I like to put this in Git projects where I just clone different Git projects. So I'm gonna say git clone and then that path, make this a little bit bigger. I don't know how big is big enough. And so we cloned that. Let's now go into it. And okay, it's all good, Ken? We run out of memory in our cloud storage or?
All right. Yeah, we're good. We're good. I just accidentally bumped it.
By the way.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to put the TDD GitHub link in the Zoom chat for everyone.
Okay, cool. By the way, this today's episode is sponsored by Hacks Organic Barbecue Sauce, smoked maple mustard. It's pretty good. And yeah, they're not paying us yet, but hopefully we can get them to throw in something into ETH drop, right? And have a, yeah. So here we are in just this empty folder, kind of sad. So I'm going to go to like a newer version of Node. I have NVM, so it's pretty easy. You can just switch, right? If you wanted to do 15.2.3. Well, I guess I need to install this first. So that might not actually be a 15.2.3 version, right? 15.14. Anyway, I don't really need to be doing this because, well, let's use version 14 because I already have truffle and things installed on there. Okay, let's open this in VS Code. And I'm just gonna kind of open these. I mean, a lot of people don't like how I have things overlapping all the time, but it's okay. And what do we want to do here? I'm just gonna say npm init just to make that package.json file. Just keep hitting enter. Although this is saying ISC, which is kind of weird because we said MIT, but it doesn't matter a whole lot. Okay, and then I guess, I mean, we can use hard hat or truffle, but I feel like I'm just more familiar with truffle right now, so let's use that. I have that installed here. So just say truffle init. And sweet. So I have a bunch of stuff here now. Test folder is empty, which is not so great, but we have our migration file and well, yeah, migration file for this, and then the migration solidity that actually like makes the migrations happen, right? So let's make a new contract for the family feud stuff. And if we say all, then it will create like the migration for the migration file and the test file for us, which is pretty cool. So I'll call this family feud poll. Okay. Okay, so we have that. This one, we want to basically do this, but family feud poll is what we want to deploy here. Okay, and then we have our test here, right? This is just telling us that it's giving us these accounts to use. So we already know that. And we could maybe destructure this accounts, right? That's an array of what? Like our like owner, contract owner, and what do you call the people you're asking poll questions to? Um, people, person one, person two. Yeah, if anybody has a better name for that, it's probably better than person. Um, okay. So let's just go back to the README, right? I don't know. Someone said one time, README driven development, right? Which is like kind of a joking thing, but it's just saying like, hey, let's just think about what we're doing a little bit before we start coding it. So I kind of want like, let's think about like the functions, right? I want something that's like submit new question, right? And maybe this is can only be called by the owner, right? So this is like the admin adding a new question into the question bank. Okay. And so then we can say like maybe there's each question can have 100 answers, and then it becomes like a locked question or unavailable, unanswerable, right? So if we say get answerable questions, then that can maybe return like an array of strings, and those strings are different questions that you can answer, right? And I was thinking another one would be like submit an answer, right? If you're the recipient, you want to be able to submit an answer for a question. And then one that's like get stats, um, get question stats, I was thinking it could be called. Right? And if you put these in camel case, or I guess they're more like functions if they're camel case, but it's easier to read if they're not. So let me make them not. Okay. And then remember every kind of function in the blockchain world, right, is either going to read from the blockchain or write to the blockchain. Right. So these ones, I could say maybe this is a read function. Oh, this is a write function, right? Because we're submitting an answer, we're adding that then into the blockchain, right? And so this is the whole I guess, advantage of doing it in a blockchain way is like, well, what if you don't trust the admins who are running Family Feud? You know, if it's all public on the blockchain, then you can see these are actually the people who answered this question and the way that they answered it, right? So this would be a read one, just getting different questions. And then this would be writing, like adding this to our bank of questions. And then we could think about maybe like what kind of inputs this would take. Right, so this would just be like a string of the new question. This is just like the weirdest pseudo syntax, but this get answerable questions, right? You don't really need anything. It's inputs here. But then this would return like a string array of questions, right? And submit answer. Probably gonna want to send the answer at least, right? And so get question stats, I'm gonna say maybe something like a question ID, right? That could be maybe an integer. And then we're gonna want, so what do we want here? Kind of like if you think about the board in Family Feud, right? You have some answers and then you have a number of how many people answered that way, right? So in like, depends if you're thinking about from like Solidity or JavaScript side, but in the Solidity side, we could say maybe we have this tuple of two arrays, right? And so one would be this string array of answers, and then the other one could be this integer array of like answer count, right? Where each answer has a number that is the number of times someone said that answer. Okay. So I guess where do we start, right? Maybe submitting a question. And let's maybe put this up here so that we can keep this readme around and just have it like down here. And I'm gonna hide this. Okay. So another nice thing that we can do, just kind of set up, is to have like a before each, right? Put an async function in here, and then move this out because you probably want to create just a new, and we can say new instead of deployed to actually create a new, fresh instance of this contract. And I'll say let, right? Because I want to reassign this every time down here. Family Feud poll. Okay. And then you can set that equal to this. Okay. And then it should allow admin, no, maybe I'll say owner since we named owner up here on line 5, right? Oh, by the way, totally random, but I found this cool thing that I changed on my other computer. if you go to, what is it? Accessibility, display, and then cursor, you can make your cursor size really huge, which is kind of funny. That's too huge, but I X'd out of it already, so I guess it's too late. So should allow the owner to submit a question. Okay. And let's make this async because the very first thing we're going to want to do is call this. So our family feud poll, and then submit question, right? And we'll just type anything here, right? I could even take this, extract it out to a constant in like the close scope right here and closing scope, right? So that'll just make a const for me. And I could call this maybe like mock question, you know, it's kind of just fake data that we're setting out for our test. We don't really care what it is, but we want to use that in our assertion later, you know, expect question to equal mock question, right? Something like that. And we could maybe say, if we make this a public field just for our test, and I think there might be a special way that you need to get this, but let's start running our tests. And I'm sure it's going to say, hey, submit question is not a function. Maybe there will be something else further upstream that's broken, but okay. So yeah, it's not a function. You're right, it's not a function, but we can change that, right? So let's make a function and name it submit question. And this will take a string question. Okay. And we want this to be called from the outside. So we can make external. And why does it not like this? Okay, so either memory or call data. So if we put call data, well, okay. Okay, so if we, let's say we have a string array up here, right? We're just making this on the contract, right? So this is something that's saved into the blockchain. And we're gonna call this questions. Being able to deduce common type. And okay, I think I don't even need to do that. Right, just say it's a string array and it gets initialized. I'm thinking like JavaScript here. Okay, and so let's just push this question into our array. Wow, that's not too bad. So let's try this. I have a gut feeling that this is not going to work, but let's let our test help us figure out if it works or not. Okay, so it's saying questions is undefined. And we did not make this public. Is it here? Yeah. It's a string array public questions, right? I mean, yeah. Personally, I prefer the order of TypeScript because you can just read it and it makes sense, but okay. Doesn't actually matter what order as long as you have the things. Okay, so it's saying that this is a function. So let's just assign this to a variable over here. And I'll call this is maybe the actual questions. Okay, and sorry. So if anybody knows how to do this, can help me out, but I think you have to, or it could just be you call it like this, like getting in JavaScript, getting the value of a public variable of your Solidity contract. And I'm not doing anything with this, so. Whoa, okay. Okay, interesting. So it looks like this is a promise, but also expected a parameter. Got it. 0. All right. We may need to do some Googling here. JavaScript. Okay. And so this first one is pretty much what we want. I'm going to plus this guy because I like his question. Well, plus his question because I like him, or just because I like his question. Actually, it's too long of a question. I don't like it. Yeah, he like uploaded his entire project into the question. Okay. Oh, I guess because the person asked him to. Okay, yeah. See, I was thinking of something like this: dot call, and then this dot then is kind of telling me it's a promise here. So let's get out of here. And so what did we learn there? Yeah, we want to do dot call on questions. Okay. And wait that. All right, so let's see what happens here. By the way, I had the nodemon thing, so while that's running, I'll do Control T, Command T, I don't know. I'm using a Windows keyboard here. And install nodemon. Right, that'll let us rerun our tests. And I had a different, yeah. Okay, just gonna go into my package JSON from here. Sorry, it's just in the root here. Okay, and I have a test watch here, right? This one is kind of cool too. The Solidity code coverage. And even this one is interesting too with the size. Okay, so let's take all of these. So here in our test scripts, we just have echo no test, which is like not very useful. But I mean, they don't know what to start you with, right? It's just any npm project, so it's just a funny thing that they leave you with. Okay, so this is doing node mon, checking the JavaScript and Solidity files, right? That's what we want. And then running test truffle test compile all. Okay, so that should be fine. We could do this. Truffle size, right? Because there actually is a max size. You can kind of break your contract up into smaller pieces to get around it, but it is something to think about sometimes. Okay, and then Solidity coverage installed also. And yeah, this probably should be dev dependencies. So let's wait till that's finished. Still going. Okay. And let's go back to here. So got some of those things. Let's get this back to green and then I can show you guys those things. Okay, so invalid number of parameters for questions. So not sure why it's expecting parameters. I mean, oh, this is still playing. Let's just Google this. So it's probably, yeah. This is a totally different question. Pass the arguments to your constructor, but interesting. I mean, I don't think that's relevant to what we're doing here, but I mean, that's what all these people are having the same problem. They're trying to instantiate a thing and not passing anything to the constructor, so that's not helping. I wonder if it wants like the from owner. Someone said why new instead of deployed? Because new actually makes a new version, right? If you just say deployed, then you could be modifying the state and then reusing that in other tests, and it's just gonna confuse you and cause problems, you know? So I generally just say .new so that every test is using a new one. Okay, so here, invalid big number value. So it wanted a big number. I have no clue, but we can say get questions. Okay, that doesn't take anything, and it just returns this string array. And we can return questions. Yeah, we want this really external, right? Public kind of implies that it can be called by the outside or from in your own code. And it's like a little bit narrower kind of to just say external if you only need it to be called externally. Okay, what does it want me to do here? Memory? And wait, am I using a, yeah, okay. So I think it just wants me to add this. Probably because we're using a really old Solidity version, or okay, so now it's telling us we can make this view. And cool, no squiggles. This one, I mean, honestly, we don't even really need. And okay, so now yes. Okay, so I want to actually use this here, right? So the actual questions can be get questions. Okay, we might need to use our deep. Actually, the test watch. And remember, we added this to package JSON, so we want to say npm run test watch. Okay, so it's doing that, node mon and truffle test. Make this bigger, sorry guys. Although, I don't know if that's good or if it's too big now. It kind of like makes it just confusing to read the functions when they're on like tons of lines, but okay, so interesting. Expected question, so this was the actual question, to equal our family feud poll, which is not right. Right? Family feud poll is the contract. So we want it to equal mock question. And actually, we want it to be an array containing this mock question, right? Okay, so now I save that and our tests automatically restart. That's pretty nice. Okay, so this kind of interesting, right? Because it looks like this array should be equal to this array that's exactly the same. And yeah, that's just a shy, quirky kind of thing. And I have a friend named Deep. And Deep would come to these meetings, then he would be cool, but he's not. So but we still need them in order to make this test fast. So okay, did it. Took a while, but we're back to green. Okay, and let's take a look at some of these other things here. So you probably shouldn't do this, but I'm just gonna type in dev dependencies here and change these dev dependencies. Okay. Don't really think it's gonna matter for running stuff because we already installed them, but yeah. So if we do this size and npm run size, and okay, no plugins detected. So let's go back to our ETH project, not this one. This one. And so in the root of your project, right, you're either going to have truffle config or hard hat config, some kind of config. And we can say, right, all the different networks that we want to deploy to, compiler that you want to use, and then plugins here. Okay, so because we just scaffolded this project, like, right, 30 minutes ago, everything is commented out. But that's okay. You just come to the bottom and add some plugins here. Okay, and I already installed the npm package, so man. Okay, maybe I do need to install it again since I changed that dev dependency. Not found in global or local node modules. So let's just look for a second in these node modules. Solidity coverage. Oh, trouble contract size, I think is its own package I would need to install. I'm gonna do -d here so that it adds it in the dev dependencies here with the other ones. Okay, cool. So that's there. And man, build. Okay, so it's looking in the build folder. So let's just do a build of this, right? Because yeah, because it's really you care about the size of your final build that you're actually sending out to the server, right? That's where you run into that size limitation. Okay, so that compiled. If we look over here, we have a build folder now. So we should get a different error. No, just kidding. We should get some good output. Oh, I just said build again. The size. Okay, so we have our migration file that's 0.3 kilobytes and family feud that's 1.58. So 24, I think, is the maximum. So we have plenty of room here. And we're also not doing the optimization compiler that you can do. So yeah, we're fine. but it's just a nice thing to have, right? Especially if you're if you're trying to deploy and running into those your project is too big errors. The other thing we can do is test CC. So this is using Solidity coverage, right, to show our code coverage. So, I mean, it's nice, like people say, we have 100% code coverage, right? We have our tests going through every single branch of every line. And actually we do. But the thing is that it's like, even that isn't really good enough, because it doesn't tell. I wish there was something in this that would check that you're asserting all the right things. Because we're actually not, well, I guess here we are. We're asserting that the questions were saved correctly. But that's the thing, right? If I delete this, now our tests are literally not asserting anything at all, right? But our output is still just going to be green on its, which is, I mean, yeah. So it's still on you, the coder, to make sure your tests are good and not just assume like, oh, okay, everything's 100, so it's fine. Okay, so we have these get questions. Let's say submitting an answer. Okay. And we were saying this would take a question ID. And okay, sorry. I want to do this test side first. And we also just, we didn't actually implement this, but as part of our requirements was that only the owner should be able to call this function. So we can add that in, and then we would add a test that says so maybe we can have our describe here, and even there's something context. Whoops, audio context, which I don't even know what the difference is between this and just regular describe, but I'm pretty sure this is a truffle thing that you can use instead of describe. So, and we can have our little string here, right, saying submitting a question. Should allow the owner to submit a question, right? And let's say it reverts when non-owner tries to submit a question. Okay. And let's go back to the test watch. So we can do that, but well, let's just make sure this context is doing what we're expecting, right? So contract, family, feud, poll, and then it does the it here, and submitting our question is our context, right? So that's like a little subheader here, and these are the tests underneath of this submitting a question context, right? So that's cool. And this one we could do, right, like we looked at last week, either the truffle assertions library or how they did it in crypto zombies, where they just kind of make their own util function that does a try catch. And when your thing reverts, it will sort of parse the error in the catch and then make sure that it reverts with the right string. Okay, but so I wanted to set up like another context down here for submitting an answer. Right? And in our it, we could say well, we could just call this person, right? So we can just say like contestant. I mean, see, they're not really the contestants on the show. They're just like random people on the street that they're asking questions to. So I'm just gonna say people submit answers. People can submit an answer to an available question, let's say. Okay. And so we're going to want this to be async. And kind of something like this, right? Await our family feud poll. And then we want to call our new function that we wanted to name submit answer. And so if you remember you just call a function on your contract. By default, it's going to call that with the owner, like as the owner.
Could you walk us through that one more time again?
Yeah. So let's say if I push message.sender into here. And it doesn't like this because it's a okay. Without screwing that up, I'll say callers. Message.sender. And I'll make this a list of addresses. Right, callers. So if we push this in here, and then we have something to say get callers. So this will return an address. Okay, so message.sender is the address of the user who called the function, right? So we have these accounts up here. These are the users who we can call functions as. We can call submit question as the owner and say he submitted it, or person one. And so you can basically pass a second argument in here. And that's function. And we can say from. So first, when I don't do anything here, let's just say callers, right? And I'm going to use the same get callers. That's the function that we created here. And I'm just going to console log this. Okay. So it's just an object with the field colors and the value of this colors. Okay, so this is this address. Let's say it ends in EF57, right? And if we scroll up to when we, well, I guess we're not logging them anywhere. I'm going to say owner, person one, just so that we have them. Okay, so see how this address owner is our caller. So we call this function as the owner. Person one is this other address that's different. But if we wanted to call it with person one, we could say from person one. Okay. And so up here, see, this is still the owner. And now our callers is the address of this person one. Okay, so that worked. And you can always say from owner, maybe just like the way that it reads, but this is basically the same as calling it without any from value. Okay, so this is still the owner, callers is the owner. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this because I liked succinct code. And this one though, submit answer. So submit answer is not a function. And remember, we wanted to pass in some kind of question ID, maybe one, I don't know. And this is an answer. Okay. And actually, I kind of would like if these were variables. So I'm gonna go to this thing, say extract enclosing scope. And we can call this one not cancer. Sorry guys, I'm not that creative today. This one I'm gonna call tomato. Okay. And so we're calling that. Now we need to have this submit answer. Right. And so it's saying we need visibility here. I'm just gonna make it external because we don't need to call it from any other functions in our contract, right? We just need to call it from out here in our tests, the outside world. Okay, let's save some of these things. And this, I guess, technically should work because we're not asserting anything. And sorry, this is too confusing for me. I don't know why you guys let me name this tomato. I'm just gonna name this monk question ID. And then we can say, let's say, answers for question. See, I could even do our question stats. Yeah, let's do that one. Get question stats. I'll call this maybe actual question stats. Okay. And then we can call this with our mock question ID. Oh, wait. Whoops. Whoa. Oh, wait. And what do we want these to be? So, right, if you think about, I mean, I'm just gonna show you guys because I was doing this before and it seemed kind of weird to me, but it seems like when you return the tuple in Solidity, it just comes back as like an object with those number indexes as like the keys of an object, right? So what am I actually trying to say? Expected question, I think, should be 0 and expected question stats. So we submit our answer. So it will be this mock answer in an array, and this second thing in our, second thing in our tuple, right? That's 0 based, so it's 1 index. And that would just be like the number 1, right? Because we have a count of basically how many times this answer was submitted. Okay. So then we want to expect that the actual thing from our function is what we expected, what we're expecting, yeah. Okay. And we might need to use the deep again here, but let's see what our output says. Expected only one parameter to submit answer. Okay, so here we actually need to change this. String answer, because we do want to take 2 parameters. And let's say call data. Get question stats is not defined. Okay. Fair enough. I guess it's not defined. Get question stats. Right. This is going to take argument question ID, and we want to call it from outside, so it'll be external. And it's just going to return some stuff, so we'll make it view. And we have to specify specifically it returns a the array of strings, right? And don't think we can say call data here because this is, well, we didn't implement this yet, but let's see what happens. And argument array. Okay. And it's complaining because we're not actually returning anything. Variable call data pointer type can be returned without prior assignment, which would lead to undefined behavior. Oh, well, okay. So I think they want us to make these memories. I don't know what undefined behavior is. Sounds scary. I think it's some kind of C++ thing, but we can just make these memory. The question stats is still not defined. Oh, because I spelled it gas question stats. It's kind of a funny function name, but it's going to be confusing if I name this gas question stats. Okay, get question stats, still not defined. Wow. Get question stats. Takes a uint. Okay, what am I doing wrong here? So we have some functions. Oh, look at this. I'm just calling. Oh wait, get question stats. I need to say my contract instance dot get question stats. Just trying to call some random function out in the ether. And oh man, even this is not a function. We have our get question stats. External view. It could be that not actually returning things here. Oh, okay, here we go. All right, finally found the function. And so we're getting back, looks like just two empty arrays. I guess that's what happens when you just do nothing in your function. But it kind of makes sense, right? Because it's returning, it said it was going to return this. So that's kind of like the default, like in Go, it always has just a 0 value. So we want an array with this, an array with a number, okay? So we could have a string answers, but if you think about it, we kind of need a set of answers for each question, right? So what if we had a mapping called answers, and it mapped. Wait, getting this. All right. Sorry, mapping of the question ID, which I think we said was uint, to a string array. These are answers. Equals that arrow here? Okay. Okay. And yeah, this is the part I haven't totally thought through, but we also need to give our question an ID. So let's kind of rename some things here. This is a string. I'm gonna call this question. Oops, I want to replace this. And we can use our F or right click and refactor. I thought rename was something I could do. Rename variable. Okay. Well, whoever is using WebStorm is laughing at me right now, but I'm just okay. I'm gonna do this questions and make it only match case. Call these question strings. And we can say maybe that question IDs start at 1. Just keep things simple. They start at 1 and then increase by 1. So let's have maybe question IDs. This would be a uint, and then we could have just maybe a uint called like next question index. And then I could set this equal to, well, 1. And I can set this, just thinking that like I like to have the 0 index be like not really used, because when you're checking if this exists, 0 can be kind of your false condition. And I'm just going to set this to empty string. Okay. And so then when we submit question, we can push the question string into here. We could push into question IDs the our next question index, right? And then we can increment this so that they won't, overwrite every time we add a question. And could make one maybe get question IDs just to check that everything is all good in our tests. Okay. This is going to return uint array. And get rid of some of this. So what are we checking for here? We're getting, sorry, let me just exit this one out. Let's go back up to this one because we changed kind of a lot of how the submitting a question works. Okay, so these callers thing, we don't really need. That was just kind of experimenting with things. Okay, and then I'll say the actual question IDs. Maybe I could call this question strings. Then I'm gonna need to update this here. And we kind of want another expect. And actually, so here, right, it's getting a little bit more complicated. So maybe I'll make a new constant that's like expected question strings, where this should have been the initial, right? We have this string here to begin with. And then our mock question. And expected IDs. Maybe basically 0 and 1. So expect these to deep equal the expected strings. Expect these to deep equal, sorry, expect the IDs to deep equal the expected IDs. Okay, not that ugly. Okay, so passing in something around here. So I'm expecting the question strings to be the expected strings, expected the IDs to be expected IDs. Okay, so the actual question IDs is get question IDs. And even this, right, we don't want our front end guy to get all confused here. So we'll name these get question strings. Okay, wait, oh, I forgot to save this. Okay, so interesting. So it looks like these are big numbers, what we got. And we're expecting them to be regular numbers. There's a way, I think in Truffle you have Web3 available. And I think it's on utils. The function to change things like to and from big numbers. And feel free to shout it out. So someone said this interesting question. Is it advisable to test two functions, submit question and get question in one single test? And I mean, it would be nice to just call the submit question and then expect that our public variable here was the right thing, right? And that's what I was trying to do in the beginning of the video, and it wasn't working. So if there is a clean, nice way of doing that, then I'd probably prefer to do that. But honestly, I don't think this way is that bad because it's kind of like one complete concept of like doing something in the blockchain. And these are, well, kind of arguable if these are actual functions that we want our users to be able to call. But yeah, it's a good question. Okay, so here, this is printing out our Web3, and you can see like we have tons of functions here. Or 2BN? Okay, so 2BN is on utils. And when I logged web3.utils, it doesn't say undefined, right? It's this whole giant object here. So let's try. Two BN capital N, yeah. Okay. And then one with it as one. Okay. So in Solidity, the integers are big numbers, very big. And JavaScript is has small numbers, baby numbers, but we can convert them to big numbers and then everything works. Cool. And I did Control F and just undid my nice thing here, but it's okay. Okay, so just keep going a little bit on this. So people can submit their answer to a question. Okay, so now we have our question IDs here, we have our question strings, and we are now submitting an answer. So let's say we kind of need to say, has this answer already been found? Right? Is it in our array already? And in JavaScript, you can kind of just say array.index of and just pass something, but it's like kind of a heavy thing to do in Solidity. So you may want to use like a map, hash map kind of thing here as the lookup. So if I code this out, maybe it won't make sense. So let's say like we want to find the index of the question. Right, and so this is the index of the question in our arrays here. Okay, and it might help. Oh, okay. So we're keeping the answers here. And right, so we're keeping the answers here, but we still want to know what index it's in. So let's say this is a mapping where this one is, right, this is just to help us think about this. Group ID and, or sorry, not group ID, question ID. Think about eavesdrop. And then it will be a mapping of the answer, which is the string, to the uint, which is not the number of times that we called it, but this is just the index. This is the question ID. The string then is the answer. And then this is, let's say, the array index, or just the index. Okay, and this is kind of our next question index that we can put here. So I think we need to give this thing a name, and I'll call this answer to index. Okay. So we have our question strings pushing in here. Question index. Okay, so that's all fine. Right, next question index. And we probably actually want a answer index. Answer. And remember, we're going to need one for each question. Okay. And so we have our answers here, which we could maybe set to just this empty string answer for our zero index. And then insert count. Okay. Okay. So now back here, we can, here, let's maybe bring this over here just so we can see our variables and function. Okay. So in our answers, we want to push the answer, right? That's kind of an obvious thing. But how do we do that? So our first mapping, right? We get the key, which is our uint question ID, and then this is going to give us this string array. So then we can push our answer into that. Okay. Why is it not like this? Oh, probably need to say memory here. Types and storage containing nested mappings cannot be assigned to. Or they're saying that they don't like this. I think so. Interesting. Okay, that's okay. So we can just say if our index, well, I think actually we might not need to worry about this. So our answers question ID, we're pushing the answer. Then we want to increment the count, right? So answer count for our question ID, right? We're going to drill into this mapping and then get to this thing, which should actually be an array of integers. And if it's like the first time we call it, it should just be 0. So if I say plus plus here, okay, so for each answer, okay, here's where we need that answer index, right? Because we don't know which answer. Interesting, because we kind of want to use, we want it to ultimately return as an array. Right. But we also want to kind of keep track of it in this mapping format. So let's say answer index is, and this one, oh, right, I have it over here. Is, let's try to look this up in our array, in our mapping here. So we have our question ID, and then the answer. Okay, so this should give us the value here, the index in our arrays. And if it doesn't exist, then it'll be 0, right? And so what does that mean? We found it means we didn't find it. And so we want to basically use the next index. Oh, right. Our next answer index. So let's set the index here equal to our next answer index for this question. And at the end, we're going to want to increment this next answer index. And so I wanted to push some stuff into that in the beginning, right? Oh, I guess because you need the question ID, right? It didn't make sense to what I was trying to do, initialize it there. So because this is nested mapping, so when it's just the 0 case, let's just push some like junk things into the, because we don't want our arrays to have important things in the 0 spot, right? We want that to just be the failure case. So, and I'm just gonna push 0 into this. Oh, but we need to say for this question. Okay. And so sorry, let's say if our, so we're submitting an answer. Right. So this is our next, oops. If our next index is 0, then we just want to push some things into here. Question ID. And then increment that so that it's 1. Okay. So then it will come down here and this answer has not been used yet. So we're going to give it the index of 1 and then push these things into it. Push my answer. And then, so our answer count, right? This, we haven't found it before. So this should just be, so we can just push these, right? Because we're adding this into the array. I'm going to say 1 because now this is the first time it was answered. So it has answer count of 1. Okay. Then I'll say else, right? So if the answer index was 0, that means it wasn't found. If it's not 0, I mean, it can't be negative, so it must be, and so, and sorry, I'm just thinking this next. Let's do this, maybe do these first. Set the next answer index. And then meet increments. Okay. And so down here, we don't need to increment this next answer index because we already have an index for it, right? This is kind of only used in like the unique answers that we get. else, and we already have this answer index. So we already should have our question, our answer in here at the right index. And so really all we want to do is say our answer count, increment our answer count index. And I don't think we do this. X this out so we can see this. Submit answer. So going back to this test, right? So we wanted to return this monk answer 0 and 1. Data location must be call data for parameter and external function. Okay. Let's call data. Oh, it's got nothing. This is interesting. So this one, we're submitting the answer for this. And our mock answer. And so I would think it's getting 0 as their index. And so it would at least give me the empty string. Calling our submit answer, right? And then our get question stats is just a function. So yeah, that's not surprising that it's just returning nothing. But we want to return what our answers and question answers and answer count. So that's just the parens and I think so. We have our question ID, right? So this is going to give us that array of strings answers. That question. Ah, man. Sorry, guys. That's good. Yeah. Get your COVID shot, guys. Okay. It's just saying once a semicolon. What is this? Rust programming right now? Our whole thing stops because we miss a semicolon. Okay, so we got things. Length 1, negative, red, null. So, okay, we're getting closer. And so actually this should be, I guess, empty string mock answer, and this would be 0, 1. Right, so we'll get this empty first thing, but it's not that big of a deal. And so could be the big number thing, right? So probably going to want to convert these to big numbers. Wow, it worked. And just to make sure, let's say 2 people can submit an answer to an available question. Okay. And so I'm going to call this submit answer. Not that it matters a whole lot with our implementation right now, but I'm going to say this one is called from person 1, and we're going to call it a second time from person 2. Okay, and so now I'm just going to leave this and see if it fails, because I'm expecting it to have this one mock answer twice, and then the value of that be 2. Okay, it is. And we can say 2 people can submit same answer. This is borderline getting into too many things for one test, but and the third person submits a different answer, right? So I'm gonna come up here. We have 10 accounts to work with, so I can just keep going here. Person 3, we can call this with person 3, and rather than just having one mock answer, we're gonna have a mock answer 1 and mock answer 2. And I'll say this is answer 1, this is answer 2. And this first and second person will call with mock answer. Well, with mock answer 1. And the third person, mock answer 2. And do we want to call this with our question ID? And so with this mock answer, we should have 2 called 2 times. And then mock answer 1 should be 1. Okay. Add semicolons anywhere you like or not. And we're good. Let's do a little code coverage run. See, like, code coverage is good to tell you if you're missing tests. Kind of. Okay, yeah, so this is interesting. And also, if you didn't know this, it makes a nice little website to view your code coverage. So you open this up, go to the index HTML, open this up in a browser, and in our context, we have our family feud poll here. So going through all these, checking these, oh, okay, get callers is the only thing we're not testing here, right? And that was but this is good, right? Because then it's telling us, hey, we have this function that it's like just hang out here and eat it. Okay. Hopefully we're not calling that so here. Nope. So we can run this and, you know, it's still on you to make sure all your specs are good, but I think that's okay. Cool. Green Hunteds, guys. By the way, I told George that you can put emojis in your Git commits. So
gotta add the 100, man.
And it's sometimes you need to put a space at the end, but it should work. So yeah. Any questions, guys? Or I guess should we here? Let's do a farewell goodbye to all the YouTubers. Thanks everyone for coming out and live in person. So thank you. Goodbye. Okay, hello everybody. This is the next day, Saturday. Just wanted to do a follow-up video and explain some things that we were confused about yesterday. And it's pretty interesting, right? So I found this and I actually have it up here. A question someone asked, how could I get public array from JavaScript, right? Which is what we were trying to do. Using this, your contract instance dot call. You know, this is kind of a weird syntax, but it should, in theory, work the same way as doing dot your field name and then dot call, and then this is a promise. And we weren't getting this opcode. We were getting like expected one argument, right? And I'm like, this is just a public field. Why is it expecting one argument? Right. And so actually, if you pass in 0, so I created this test starts question string with an empty string. Right. And in this question strings is this here, which is an array with empty string. And calling it with this 0 just gives you back the empty string, right? And we see, right, so the answer here is basically that the automatic getter will only return the element of your array and requires that index of the element that you want. You need to explicitly write your own getter function to get your array, right? So for arrays, it seems like we don't have an easy way to access that. And I just have this other, yeah. So here in the comment, note that the arrays above can only access one value, right? One element, maybe I could say. And note that calling public fields can be retrieved either by calling it as a function, right? So like this hard-coded string and then just with parentheses. This is this hard-coded string right here. Or with this dot call syntax, right? Hard-coded num. And just to show you, right, it doesn't matter if it's strings or integers, we could do any public field with this syntax. We could even call this array one with the just as, call the public field as a function syntax. And this thing is in watch mode, so it's showing that they're still passing. So yeah, keep that in mind that it works slightly differently. If you're reading, if you want to read a public variable off of your contract, that's just like a primitive integer string, that should be fine. You can do it in your test. For array, you can only pull the index. So we could have just tested that, the first index is the right thing. And then in our test submitting a question, we could just get the first and then second, I guess if the first is just an empty string. And yeah, for mappings, you can't really even return them back to JavaScript. So that's kind of why we keep track of this array. And the mappings is just kind of for the Solidity side to determine which arrays to return. And yeah, it goes back to kind of someone had asked, like, is it okay to call the write function, submit a question, and the read function? And like, if your test is passing, it's fine, right? We know that both functions are working. And I mean, they could both have bugs in a weird way that offset each other. And then this is technically true, that the actual ones we got from the get are equal to the submitted question, right? So if you just have some hard-coded stuff, check that this is actually saved into the contract, it might be a little better, right? Or a little less likely to be a false positive failing test. Also, if it fails, right, you have to go through and check, okay, well, is there something wrong with this function, or is there something wrong with this function, or is there something wrong with this function, or is it just my test that's wrong, right? So it's like all these different things that you need to check rather than just having it be the test and the function that you're trying to test, right? So yeah, just some other things to think about. So that's it for this week. I pushed all these things as just other commits to our decentralized family feud poll project. So check it out and see you next time.